Did you know that it's almost guaranteed that every single species will eventually die out? In fact, scientists believe that 99% of all animals that have ever lived are now extinct. Sad, I know, but maybe extinction isn't as permanent as we thought. Through advances in biotechnology, there are some animals that are on the cusp of resurrection. It's time to learn about some unbelievable species that just might make a comeback. Upbeat music, welcome woolies. You know how the ice caps are melting and we're all totally doomed? Well, there might be an interesting solution to that. Bring back the woolly mammoth. These gigantic creatures could grow up to 12 feet tall and weigh 8 tons. That's the weight of 4.5 cars. Herds of mammoth were once widespread across the mammoth steppe, grasslands that covered Europe, Asia, and North America. Okay, we all know they're neat, but how will these wumbo woolies fight climate change? Well, you see, across the Arctic tundra airs permafrost, ground that remains completely frozen for at least 2 years. But thanks to good old global warming, permafrost has begun to thaw. When permafrost melts, it releases carbon into the atmosphere, further accelerating the effects of climate change that will lead to mass extinction. Geophysicist Dr. Sergei Zimov theorizes that if the tundra can be turned back to grassland, like it would have been in the mammoth's time, it could stop the permafrost from melting. Introducing big grazing herbivores disrupts the ground and allows for deeper freezing of permafrost during the winter. When summer rolls around, the layer of grass insulates the permafrost, keeping it from melting. I guess we just need to find some mammoths. Can't be that hard, bringing these beasts back is one mean feat. But Dr. George Church feels up to the task. Church is a founder of multi-million-dollar Texas-based company Colossal Biosciences, who plan on bringing back all sorts of extinct creatures. Let's hope they do better than Jurassic Park. Church plans to create an elephant-mammoth hybrid that will live in the Arctic tundra. The animal wouldn't exactly be a mammoth. It would only contain about 1% of mammoth DNA, making it more an Arctic elephant that can comfortably survive in the tundra. For this, they need mammoth DNA, which isn't too tricky to get considering the species vanished later than you probably think. The last herd only disappeared in 1650 BCE. That's over 1,000 years after the pyramids of Giza were built. Now, the closest relative of the mammoth is the Asian elephant. Church will remove DNA from a female Asian elephant's ovum and replace it with mammoth-like DNA. The elephant-mammoth embryo will then be placed into an African elephant surrogate. Despite the difficulties of cloning and the moral objections some might have, Colossal claim they will have an elephant-mammoth calf by 2027. I know I can barely take care of a plant, but come on. Who wouldn't want a pet mammoth? Tasmanian Troubles, Australia, home to some of the most wonderful fauna on the planet. Or rather, it was until the arrival of Europeans. Colonizers weren't too kind to the region's wildlife, and one of the species they ended up wiping out was the thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian tiger, and being a totally different species from the Tasmanian devil. This carnivorous marsupial was once found across New Guinea, Australia, and South Tasmania. It was nocturnal, preying on kangaroos and preying on sick and dying animals. After their extinction, diseases in the region became widespread, such as the horrible devil-face tumor, which quickly spread through the Tasmanian devil. Without predators, rodents and birds overgraze on vegetation, leading to premature tree deaths and wildfires. And to top it all off, invasive species brought over by Europeans have grown out of control due to the lack of predators and prey on native species. As a result, more mammals have become extinct in thylacine genome from a 108-year-old specimen preserved at the Victoria Museum in Australia. Colossal plan to use gene editing to take the stem cells of a dasyurid, a family closely related to the Tasmanian tiger, and transform them into thylacine cells. The cells would create an embryo hybrid, which would then gestate in an artificial womb or dasyurid surrogate. The animals will then be reintroduced to Tasmania in order to help rebalance the ecosystem. Here's hoping the thylacine gets a second MB of cuteness is so rare that for a long time it was only known by its fossils and categorized as extinct until it was spotted in a log pile at the ski lodge in 1966. It spends 7 months of the year hibernating in burrows under the snow, occasionally waking to snack on its winter stores. They only fully emerge in this spring to stuff themselves with food and find a mate. Sounds like me if I ever mated, that is. Anyway, their diet consists of invertebrates, particularly the tasty bagong nuff. Climate change means less snow for the possums to burrow in. And without this snowy blanket, their burrow drops from 96 degrees Fahrenheit to 35 degrees Fahrenheit, freezing them as they hibernate. The wane in possum numbers is so drastic that Dr. Michael Archer of the University of New South Wales decided to step in. Archer didn't want to risk releasing them back into the mountains, considering said mountains were still being messed up by climate change, but he had a solution. He found rests and monitoring the experiment. We'll have to wait to see if the possums adapt to woodland living. Reason to brood, giving birth is such a bore. Ladies, do you ever wish that you could eat your eggs, grow your baby in your stomach, and then give birth through your mouth? No, oh man, I really don't understand women. The southern gastric brooding frog was discovered in 1972 in Queensland, Australia, and its birthing practices are indeed that bizarre. In 1974, herpetologist Mike Tyler discovered alas. These awesome amphibians went extinct in 1983 when the last frog in captivity died. This was shortly followed by the extinction of the northern gastric brooding frog in 1985. The frogs may have been driven to extinction by deforestation, invasive species such as weeds and feral pigs, and lethal chytrid fungus, an awful disease that has wiped out more than 90 amphibian species worldwide. Feeling that these animals were too cool to be consigned to the history books, Dr. Michael Archer, yes, need a complicated surrogate parent. And at 1 to 2 inches in length, the frog was also pretty pint-sized and could easily be raised in a laboratory. In 2011, Archer successfully produced a frog embryo. With any luck, there will be mother frogs puking up babies in no time. Cluckosaurus pex. Did you know that the closest living relative to the terrifying, monstrous, carnivorous Tyrannosaurus rex is the humble chicken? What's more, it might even help us bring the terrible lizard back from X yet to grow a recognizable face. A large patch of cells in the middle of what will become its face develop proteins, and it's these proteins that form the beak. Buller and Abzanov hypothesized that if they caused a chicken embryo to develop the proteins the way other animals do, the embryo would become a bird without a beak. Instead, they would have skulls like their dinosaur ancestors. The scientists added microscopic beads into the middle of what would become the chicken embryo's faces. Unlike the nursery rhyme, this Jack Horner is less interested in Christmas pies and more about playing with genetics to create a chickenosaurus. For Horner, major modifications are needed to make such a creature. The animal would need to have teeth, a long tail, and its wings would be reverted back into arms and hands. So what motivates Horner to create a dino-chicken abomination? The most important thing is that you cannot activate an ancestral characteristic unless the animal has ancestors, or the scimitar-toothed cat, a relative of the saber-toothed cat. The DNA was extracted from a cat that was discovered in the melting permafrost of Canada's Yukon Territory. The specimen lived at least 47,500 years ago. That's one old puss. Sequencing the cat's genome allowed scientists to discover more about this apex predator. And these felines were certainly a force to be reckoned with. An adult could weigh up to a ton and measure over 10 feet long. That's as big as a polar bear. They're so formidable. What drove them to extinction? Change in climate led to a decline of large mammals, which may have caused more direct competition with other cat species that were better suited to catching smaller prey. When it comes to de-extincting these fearsome fuzzies, there are some hurdles to overcome. For example, the scimitar-toothed cat has no close modern relatives. They're very distantly related to modern cats, diverging around 20 to 0.5 million years ago. In comparison, humans and gibbons pea cars in your way, I'd much prefer a prehistoric pet, and lucky for me, this dream may one day become a reality. This is the woolly rhinoceros. These hairy hulks could reach 6.5 feet in height and weigh 3.5 tons. That's about 1.5 times as heavy as modern rhinos, which weigh in around 0.3 tons. These shaggy Goliaths would while away their day munching on grassland. Throughout Europe, North Asia, and Asia between 5.3 million and 11,700 years ago. That was of course until climate CHE in northeastern Russia. Valery Plotnikov, a researcher who examined the remains, told Russian media that the rhino was between 3 and 4 years old when it died, most likely by drowning. As you might have guessed, discoveries of specimens in melting permafrost are becoming more common due to climate change. The remains of extinct animals such as mammoths, foals, puppies, cave lion cubs, and bear have all been discovered in Siberia. Using an 18,500-year-old specimen, the woolly rhino's gen. There go my dreams of having scimitar-toothed cats and woolly rhinos duke it out. HMM. Maybe it's a good thing I'm not in charge of this. Dodo Rodu, you may have heard something described as dead as a dodo before. Well, put that saying in your back pocket because it might not be true much longer. The dodo was a flightless bird native to Mauritius, an African island in the Indian Ocean. Scientists believe that Mauritius was formed around 8 million years ago, and that dodo's ancestors are a Thai. The dodo was quick and agile, with at least one sailor describing them as hard to catch. If they were alive today, maybe we'd be training dodos for whatever the bird equivalent of crufts is, and that day might come. The bird may have died out in the 17th century, but that won't stop scientists from trying to bring them back. In 2022, Dr. Beth Shapiro, professor of ecology and evolutionary biology at the University of California, revealed that a complete dodo genome had been sequenced from on dodo embryo. They wouldn't have anywhere to keep it. When cloning a mammal, the embryo can be stuck in a surrogate mother's uterus and is left to grow. Birds have no uterus, so scientists currently have no place to gestate the embryo. Currently, researchers are working on solutions to that problem, but no dodo chicks have hatched yet. Let's hope they haven't put all their eggs in one basket. Bucardo Rebornardo in 2003, something amazing happened and hasn't been replicated since. No, I don't mean in 1999. There was only one Bucardo left, a female called Celia. She was captured by researchers who took a cell and froze it in liquid nitrogen before releasing her back into the wild. Curtains closed on the Bucardo species in 2000 when Celia was hit by a falling tree. What a tragic end for an entire species. However, Celia's story wasn't over yet. Scientists, led by Jose Folch from the Center for Agronutrition Research and Technology in Aragon, Spain, had the means to clone embryos from her no doubt a massive achievement, and is the only example of an extinct animal being brought back to life, albeit briefly. Some argue, such as reproductive biologist Bill Holt from the Zoological Society of London, that cloning is an unsustainable method of conservation. Even if scientists were successful in de-extincting creatures, the cloned animal's gene pool would be so small they'd be prone to ill health and disease. Additionally, with the natural world shrinking, there's a good chance that Ret species native to the USA. These days, however, their numbers are restricted to the mountain states. These guys are nocturnal, only waking to hunt prairie dogs, or they usually do. Regrettably, these animals' habitat is being destroyed to make way for farmland. Tick your bingo card if that weren't enough. Their numbers are dwindling from the rise of the sylvatic plague. This plague is the same bacterium as the Black Death, which wiped out an estimated 25 million people during the Middle Age, and were released into the wild and eventually grew to over 300. As a result, the ferret's gene pool is more of a puddle, with the animals being victims of genetic drift. This is when animals are too closely related to produce healthy offspring. To solve the issue, scientists turned to cloning. Willow was a girl from Métis, Wyoming. She never bred in captivity and died in 1999. Knowing that her genetics were unique, clever scientists took her tissue samples to be cryopreserved at the frozen zoo. So won't be breeding on the plus side, however. Revive and Restore aim to breed more ferrets from Willow's cells. Looks like they might weasel their way out of extinction after all. So there you go. If you could choose one of these animals to bring back, which one would it be? Let me know down in the comments below, and be sure to like and subscribe for more amazing content.